So a lot of kidney disease is caused by type 2 diabetes. And type 2 diabetes is essentially quite simple to understand. It's basically your body has too much sugar. Remember that glucose. When we talk about sugar, you don't talk about table sugar, but and that's a glucose and fructose, which is sucrose. But sugar is a generic term that includes glucose. So if you eat carbohydrates like bread, starchy foods, basically. Starches are long chains of glucose, which is a sugar, right? So when your body has too much glucose, then it can store some of it, but then eventually it spills out in the blood. Your blood glucose, which is your blood sugar, goes up. And you get diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, which is really the biggest cause of kidney disease in the United States and Canada. Then, of course, we've had this big epidemic of obesity, then an epidemic of type 2 diabetes, which is leading to more kidney disease. So a few years ago, probably about 10 years ago, I was very, you know, I started to really question what I had been taught, which is that type 2 diabetes is a chronic and progressive disease. And I realized that it wasn't. It was actually just a lie. And it was funny because at the same time that every diabetes association in the world, what doctors were being taught, what dietitians were being taught, what the American Diabetes Association had there on the website was it's a chronic and progressive disease. Everybody knew it was a lie because if you lost weight, your diabetes would either get better or go away. So to me, it was this horrifying sort of divide between what the sort of authorities were saying, which was a complete fabrication and very harmful to people, right? You tell them that they can't do anything about it, they won't do anything about it, right? You should be telling them they can do something about it and telling them how. So there's this horrifying divide between what the medical authorities were saying and what was the truth. And the truth is that it was a reversible disease, but you had to focus on weight loss. So I got very interested in that question of weight loss, which is how I sort of started really thinking about that entire problem of calories, because I had believed it was all about calories for so long as well. But it simply wasn't true. It didn't hold up to any rigorous thinking about the problem. And this whole problem of weight gain was more of a hormonal issue, and if you fix that, and there are various ways you can fix that. Changing the diet is probably the best way, but also using things like intermittent fasting as a tool could be very effective. Then you can reverse the type 2 diabetes, and as I started to implement it in my clinic, I actually saw the most sort of amazing results. It was like, for example, one fellow, I'd been treating him for like 10 years, and he had type 2 diabetes, and he was very rigorous. He wanted to get better, but I had given him sort of the standard but wrong advice. Then I told him, okay, well, what you need to do is restrict your carbohydrates. If your body has too much glucose, why are you eating glucose, right? That doesn't make any sense. So if you think about type 2 diabetes, your blood glucose or blood sugar is high. We know that certain foods will raise your blood glucose. If you eat bread, you're eating glucose because it's a starch, so it's glucose, and therefore your blood glucose goes up. If you eat an equivalent amount of calories, say of an egg, which is proteins and fats, you're not eating glucose, you're eating amino acids and triglycerides. So certain foods will raise your blood glucose, certain foods don't raise your blood glucose. So why were you eating foods that raise your blood glucose? It didn't make any sense, but that was the standard advice. So I told him to do that. I told him that you could use intermittent fasting because if you don't eat, your body will simply burn off that glucose and your blood glucose will get better. And he was on like 100 units plus of insulin. And, I simply made a few changes to his diet, and within a month, I swear, he came off all of the diabetic medications, and his A1C went down to like 5.9, which actually classified him as a non-diabetic, which is sort of insane. Like, to me, it was sort of eye-opening that I had treated this fellow so incredibly incorrectly. And it was a standard way that everybody's treating him. Like, he had other specialists, other doctors who were treating him the exact same way. But nevertheless, it was a patient that I treated that really had been done a very big disservice not having known that information. So that's where I started to write about it. And I was like, oh, wow, this is like sort of insane.